Rome shimmered with gold and decay, its streets heavy with incense and corruption. In the Vatican's heart, Rodrigo Borgia, now Pope Alexander VI, surveyed his domain with a predator's gaze. The papal tiara weighed heavily on his brow, a burden he bore with relish. For years, he had schemed, bribed, and clawed his way to the throne of St. Peter. Now the Holy See was his. The Borgias were not noble by birth, but ruthless by nature. Rodrigo's rise was fueled by alliances forged with Spanish gold and whispered promises. Cardinals who opposed him saw their influence fade or their lives cut short. The papal court, once a bastion of piety, became a den of vice where fortunes shifted over dice and courtesans' favors. At its center stood Lucrezia, Rodrigo's daughter, a vision of golden hair and porcelain beauty. At 16, she was already a pawn in her father's grand designs. Her laughter echoed through the Vatican's gilded halls, but her sharp mind played a game she hadn't chosen. Beside her loomed Cesare, her brother, a young cardinal with a wolf's cold eyes and ambitions surpassing even his father's. Whispers began immediately. Rome thrived on scandal, and the Borgias provided ample fodder. Rodrigo's mistresses paraded openly, their bastard children raised within the Vatican's walls. Cesare's violent reputation grew with each enemy who vanished in the night. Lucrezia, sweet and innocent, was caught in a web of rumor and insinuation. The papal court was a stage. Every player knew their lines, but the script was written in blood. Beyond the Vatican's walls, the city seethed. The people murmured of poison and wine, daggers in the dark. The Borgia's enemies, the Della Rovere, the Sforza, circled like vultures, their pamphlets dripping venom. Rome had seen corruption before, but never so brazen. Beneath the frescoed ceilings of the Apostolic Palace, a darker legend took root. What manner of family was this? What sins hid behind closed doors? The stage was set, the players ready, and the world would never forget the name Borgia. The whispers take root. The first whispers were like smoke, thin, insubstantial, but impossible to ignore. They curled through Rome's taverns, slipped between courtiers' lips in the Vatican's antechambers, and seeped into anonymous pamphlets left in piazzas at dawn. Pamphlets appeared overnight, crude woodcuts depicting twisted embraces, figures vague enough to skirt libel, but unmistakable in intent. Rodrigo's jowled face, Cesare's sharp features, Lucrezia's flowing hair, all rendered in grotesque caricature. The text was worse. Verses laced with innuendo, prayers twisted into obscenity. O Holy Father, who art in bed, unhallowed be thy name. Lucrezia, walking the Vatican gardens with her ladies, noticed their silence as she approached, their eyes darting away. Even servants whispered behind their hands. She was no fool. She knew what they said. To acknowledge, it would give the rumors power. Cesare reacted differently. He cornered a printer in the dead of night, his dagger at the man's throat until he named his patron. A Sforza lackey paid to spread filth. The printer's body was found in the Tiber the next morning, his tongue cut out. The message was clear, but the damage was done. Scandal, once unleashed, could not be sheathed. Rodrigo dismissed it with a wave of his ringed hand. Let the dogs bark, he told Lucrezia, his voice thick with wine. They envy what they cannot have. His nonchalance fueled speculation. Why would a pope, God's vicar, not rage against such slander unless it held truth? At a banquet hosted by Cardinal Orsini, a rival, a poet recited verses heavy with double meaning, his eyes flickering toward Lucrezia as he spoke of flowers plucked too soon. The room stifled laughter. Lucrezia kept her chin high, but later, in her chambers, she shattered a vase against the wall. Cesare found her amid the shards. They will pay, he promised, his voice ablaid. But payment wasn't enough. The whispers had taken root. and in Renaissance Rome, where truth and lies were currency, the most dangerous stories were those people wanted to believe. Incest was the unforgivable sin, a violation of nature and divine order. In a world where the church preached purity, no accusation carried more weight. For the Borgias' enemies, it was the perfect weapon. The Borgias were reviled for their Spanish blood, their greed, their nepotism, but whispers of incest transformed them into abominations. Yet the irony was bitter. The Borgias were guilty, just not of this. Rodrigo had bought the papacy with gold, securing votes from cardinals swayed by coin. Cesare ordered assassinations with casual cruelty, believing himself above justice. Lucrezia's marriages were brokered like trade deals, her body a bargaining chip in her father's games. These were sins Rome understood, but they weren't enough to destroy the family, not like this rumor could. Pamphlets grew bolder. One, slipped under a Venetian ambassador's door, depicted Lucrezia as a modern-day Phaedra, entwined with father and brother. Another, read aloud in Trastevere's taverns, spun tales of a papal key unlocking more than heaven's gates. The Borgias' enemies needed only the seed of doubt, watered by the public's appetite for scandal. Even the church's sermons on morality and Sodom's sins were twisted into veiled condemnations. A Florentine preacher, voice trembling with fury, spoke of a house where the serpent nests in the marriage bed. He named no names. He didn't need to. Lucrezia became both villain and victim. To some, she was a seductress ensnaring her kin. To others, a pawn corrupted by those who should have protected her. The truth mattered less than the story, and the story was too delicious to resist. LucreziaBorgia was never merely a daughter. She was a key to the vaults of power her father sought to unlock. From childhood, she was groomed to serve the Borgia dynasty. Was she a willing player or a pawn moved across Renaissance politics chessboard? The answer lay shrouded in the Vatican shadows. The banquet hall glittered like a gilded cage, candles dripping wax on its silver platters, their flames casting shadows across frescoed walls. Pope Alexander VI sat at the head, his laughter booming as he raised a jeweled goblet. Rome's elite feasted, cardinals in crimson, nobles with flashing rings, unaware they were players in a deadly game. Lucrezia, in emerald velvet, presided with grace, her smile never reaching her eyes. Cesare lounged like a panther, his gaze sweeping the room. The air held roasted meats, spiced wine, and something acrid beneath the perfume. Cardinal Orsini faltered first, his flushed face turning ashen. He clutched his stomach, gasping. "I feel unwell," he muttered, lost in the laughter. By the time he convulsed on the floor, servants were already dragging him away. The music played on, others swayed, a lord retched, a bishop clawed his throat. The poison worked swiftly, a silent assassin in the wine, bread, sugared fruits. Some whispered of Canarella, the Borgias' signature brew, leaving no trace, only corpses. Lucrezia watched, serene. Cesare leaned close, his breath warm. "They should not have crossed us." She sipped her wine. "No, they should not." By dawn, 6 men were dead. The official story blamed bad shellfish, but Rome knew better. The whispers spread. The Borgias had purged their enemies in plain sight, feasting as their guests choked. These poisoned feasts became legend, reinforcing their monstrous image. What kind of daughter sat calmly as men died at her table? The Borgias played by their own rules, and woe to those who forgot. Lucrezia's wedding to Giovanni Sforza was a spectacle of silk and gold, meant to dazzle Rome. At 13, she stood in Venetian lace, her hands clasped in those of Giovanni, Lord of Pesaro, a man twice her age. The feast was lavish, tables groaning under roasted peacocks, their feathers reattached in grotesque splendor. Lucrezia accepted toasts with practiced serenity. Her father and brother watched, unreadable. When the bedding ceremony loomed, tradition demanded witnesses to prove the marriage's legitimacy. As the crowd surged, Alexander raised a hand. "Enough," he said. "My daughter is a child. Let them retire in peace." The room fell silent, a breach of custom. Giovanni's face darkened, but dared not protest. Lucrezia was led away, her eyes downcast. Behind closed doors, what transpired, or didn't, became fevered speculation. Giovanni claimed consummation. Lucrezia, in annulment proceedings, insisted otherwise. Alexander, needing to sever ties with the Sforza, declared the marriage void for non-consummation, humiliating Giovanni, who was forced to attest his impotence. "They threatened me," he snarled later. "The Pope's son held a knife to my throat." Rumors flew. Had Giovanni been impotent, or had something sinister prevented consummation? Had Lucrezia's father or brother intervened, keeping her untouched for darker purposes? The Vatican's corridors whispered with silk and perfume long after Vespers. Pope Alexander VI, God's vicar by day, shed his robes by night, revealing earthly appetites. His mistresses moved like shadows, their laughter where hymns should reign. Giulia Farnese, called La Bella for her golden hair, was the most infamous. Barely 16 when she caught the Pope's eye, her likeness painted as the Virgin Mary in Vatican frescoes, a blasphemy shocking even jaded cardinals. Venanza dei Catanii, mother of his four eldest, lingered like smoke after their affair cooled. Others, fleeting figures, faded from history. Alexander flaunted his sins. He hosted banquets where lovers dined beside bishops, bestowed titles on his bastards, and seated them above church princes. His hypocrisy was breathtaking. He preaches chastity and practices debauchery, a Venetian envoy wrote. If he defied celibacy, what other lines would he cross? Whispers grew. A man with mistresses might keep his daughter as one. Even courtiers grew uneasy. Cardinal Sforza crossed himself when Giulia perched on the papal throne. "God sees," he muttered. "God forgives," came a reply. "But the people do not." Alexander doted on his children, his pride bordering on idolatry. When Lucrezia turned 16, he gifted her a palace with tapestries of nymphs. When Cesare demanded the papal armies, Alexander dissolved his cardinalship. Blood came before God. The mistresses played their roles with cunning. Giulia curried favor with Lucrezia. Venanza ruled Rome's underworld. But Lucrezia paid the price. Every time Alexander flaunted a lover, rumors about her gained credence. The final outrage was a ball celebrating another bastard's birth. The mother so young guests averted their eyes. A Spanish bishop ventured, "Holiness, is this seemly?" Alexander laughed. "We are all God's children, are we not?" The story spread, embellished into an orgy by the time it reached Paris, with Lucrezia cast as a willing sinner. Alexander's brazenness was the crime. By tearing away piety's veil, he made every rumor plausible. Why would a man defying God's laws stop at incest? As Giulia quipped, when the Pope plays the devil, who's to say where the performance ends? Alexander's fall the summer of 1503 was stifling, Rome simmering under corruption's weight. Alexander, once untouchable, moved like a haunted man. On August 18th, he dined with Cardinal Adriano da Corneto at a villa outside the city. The meal was lavish, pheasant, figs, fine wine, but Alexander picked at his plate, his face ashen. By midnight, he writhed in agony, his robes drenched in sweat. Physicians whispered of tertian fever or rich food, but Rome suspected poison. Had the Della Rovere succeeded? Had the Sforza slipped venom into the wine? Or had God delivered retribution? Cesare, returning from campaign, found his father shrunken beneath silk sheets, eyes darting in delirium. Lucrezia clutched holy water, praying silently.